Hi everyone, my name is Amy Schuler and I am the owner of Instride Pet Dog Training. I wanted to reach out and let folks know some information about the dog industry and why I'm so passionate about some of the topics and why I do certain things. So for example, the dog industry is completely unregulated. So what that means is anybody could decide to be a dog trainer, and at times, some folks will even snag the behaviorist title without actually having the behaviorist education. So when it comes to working with dogs or puppies and their families, or one-on-one with a human and their lovely dog, there are going to be a lot of times when there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's going to be a slew of information on, of course, the internet. And some of it I wish would just finally just go away, but sadly it's still available and out there because of the fact the industry is unregulated. So when your dog is working with a trainer, what you should be hoping for and looking for is a trainer that is going to be using their most updated information available to them. So what that means is the trainer would be using science-based, humane, and compassionate skills and abilities when working with your dog or puppy. There's this misconception that certain tools will eliminate behaviors we've deemed a negative or a bad dog behavior. Remember that dogs are amoral. So your dog either feels safe or unsafe. When they're feeling unsafe, your dog will go into what we consider like the F's. So what that means is typically in the beginning, your dog would typically want to get out of the situation with flight. Most of the time, though, in our human world, your dog is plucked from Dogville or Dog World and plopped into the human world, where they are meant to be successful in most everything we've deemed the right dog behavior. So, for example, when our dogs are nervous, anxious, overwhelmed, too excitable, and they start to feel uncomfortable or unsafe, your dog will then start to head towards those F's. So again, if we take away flight, which tends to happen when your dog can move away from something, in our human world, though, dogs are typically stuck behind fences, on leashes, inside a home environment, sometimes even stuck up against us or something. And in that moment, your dog may feel that there is no escape, and therefore flight has been taken out of the equation. When flight doesn't seem like a viable option to your dog or puppy, your babe may then go into fidget, fawn, freeze. And again, if we don't respond to those signals, and a lot of times it can be subtle and smaller body language information, as well as your dog can be broken down into facial expressions, ears set, body posture, tail set, and of course, even their eyes and the way their mouth is looking will inform you as to their comfort range. If you're unfamiliar with dog body language, there are some wonderful resources I would highly recommend to take a peek-see, because if you start to understand where your dog is coming from behaviorally, we can start to also help them fit into what we would consider more of the better or good dog behaviors, but still be able to understand when they're starting to say, I'm having a hard time, I need more help. And even though we've deemed certain behaviors a bad or a good dog behavior, remember that behavior is simply that. Behavior is communication. So your dog will not be doing things to dominate you, to take over the totem pole of power, to show you again how they feel they're above you. A lot of this outdated information comes from the sort of theory of dominance theory, which was debunked by the same scientists that came up with the concept. So when it comes to working with your dog, remember your dog does not view you like another dog. They view you as another animal or critter. So again, you're a human. This doesn't mean your dog isn't perceptive and can't pick up on things you're giving out behavior-wise when it comes to your body language and your tone. Dogs have been around us for thousands of years, and because of that, they become very good at reading us. At times, though, people are not quite as good at reading them. So back to those F's. When your dog is feeling uncomfortable, if flight is taken away, fidget, fawn, freeze are no longer responded to, then your dog's only real option is what's considered fight. Fight could be as simple as a low growl. It could be sort of creating some distance by making noises, so barking and lunging and snapping in the air. It does not always mean contact. We do want to be very careful with how we work with our dogs. So for example, there have been many times where I have worked with other dogs and clients, and some of the dogs have been, sadly, due to trauma, turned into zero dogs. Zero dogs are a dog that, for example, has been scolded for giving natural dog responses to fear or anxiety, and then have been told at that level that could have been a whisper, "I don't want to hear it, no thank you." So some of those dogs have been scolded, some of them have been verbally scolded, some physically, and some have been, again, exposed to different training methods that use adversives. So aversive training, or using, for example, things that would cause pain, discomfort, intimidation, and at times fear-based responses, are then applied to the dog when they're most overwhelmed or scared. Again, a dog that's showing display of aggression, like for example, a growl, if we get rid of the growl, you're gonna then get rid of the, for example, smoke alarm in your home by taking the batteries out. The smoke alarm may not go off, but the danger is still there. So getting rid of a warning from your dog means that the dog may then get scolded from the whispers to now needing to shout to make themselves feel safe again. So let's say, for example, you have company come over and maybe they overwhelm your puppy or dog and the dog shows stress signals. We may, to try to become the dog's friend, come closer and closer, reach out a hand. Remember that reaching out a hand to any dog is not a really great way to say hello, but a great way to sometimes create more conflict or a potential bite. About 77% of bites happen in and around the home, and they tend to happen with family members and friends. About 50% of that, maybe 49% or so, tend to be for children and sadly to the face region. So when you are thinking about dog aggression, remember that a lot of these situations could have been preventable, and also could have had a better outcome for both the human, small child, and dog. So when we're going back to those warning signals, if we were to scold a growl, your dog just realizes that growling is no longer a valuable way to say no thank you, or I'm overwhelmed or need more space, and they don't offer the growl. The dog's feelings still are the exact same way without the growl being now displayed. So when we get rid of the growl, now let's say someone comes over, growling's been unacceptable, and then now the person comes over another time, the puppy doesn't growl, but the person comes over closer and closer, and the pup then might go and snap and bite the air to try to create more distance. When that now behavior gets scolded, corrected, punished, the dog now feels that there's no way to say at the low end of the spectrum, I'm not feeling comfortable or safe, and I'm, for example, trying to create more distance so I do not have to use my mouth. When those two warning signals are now scolded, we are now in the process of creating what's called a zero dog. A zero dog is a dog that skips all the warning signals or has very few because they've been scolded or corrected out of them. And now the dog goes right to a snap or bite and even makes contact to make that thing go away and make the dog feel safe again. Remember that treating aggression with more aggression does not solve the behavioral problem. Imagine you were having a panic attack and someone comes over to you and they're like, oh my gosh, are you having a panic attack? And you start to say, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. My heart is climbing out of my throat. I'm feeling really flustered. And the person says, shut up, you're fine, and slaps you across the face. You're not going to feel better, but you may potentially shut down or hide those emotions around that particular person. So when we're dealing with suppression of behavior, it doesn't get at the root cause as to why is my dog feeling that way and how can I make them feel safe again, but it's just working on shutting down the dog from even responding. That dog, though, underneath, just like the person being told you're not having a panic attack, still feels the exact same emotions or even bigger when they're in that situation again in the environment or around that person or trigger. So when we're dealing with aggression or fear or anxiety or even just normal dog behavior, the way we deal with dogs and puppies will either promote a better response from them while we can help them feel safe, or we create a much larger problem that keeps building and building and tends to then have more like a ticking time bomb scenario where they might just go to explode. A lot of times folks will say it came out of nowhere. It could have seemed to have come out of nowhere if we didn't understand the subtle body language signals our puppies or dogs are trying to communicate. So the problem with having an unregulated industry is that people can show you their TikTok videos, their YouTube videos, whatever they would like, even have a website and have multiple employees that are then also using methods that have been proven to increase aggression and have a really big rate of fallout. Fallout tends to be what happens in the process of being sort of using adversives while teaching something or someone a behavior or skill set. The problem with using adversives, unlike positive-based reinforcement and training methods, is that there is no fallout from using compassion, science-based methods that are, again, scientifically proven to work well. If we can create a scenario where a wild animal in captivity, like a tiger, can offer a voluntary blood draw from their arm without having to have the animal sedated or restrained, how come we can't do that level of training or help for our everyday dog or other domesticated animal? So when it comes to working with your dogs or puppies, my goal is to, of course, educate you, your puppy, your dog, and in a way that makes sense from both species spectrums so we can be coherent but comfortable and feel safe while learning. So training shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't be intimidating. It shouldn't hurt. If training does, the learner is stuck in a situation where they could be actually going into what's called learned helplessness. So learned helplessness is a situation where we as people can also end up in. And this could be, for example, maybe you have a toxic relationship with a family member, a friend, a spouse, a partner, and that person is very condescending, maybe verbally abusive, potentially even physically abusive. If that person is very sweet on you one day, offers you chocolates and roses and a hug, but then the next moment you don't know what's going to trigger them and they might hurt you or scare you or verbally berate you, that's not a very healthy relationship. So just like when we're nurturing small humans, we also want to use methods that are going to be helpful in promoting, again, the ability to have emotions, but help little ones regulate when they don't know how. So when it comes to dogs, if we're using that I'm going to be Jekyll and Hyde scenario, all your dog learns is at times you are safe and other times you're unsafe. And they don't know what draw of the hat they're going to be getting today. So when you're trying to teach a dog that what they're doing is wrong, remember your dog is amoral. So they don't look at things as right or wrong or good or bad. They look at things as, am I safe? Does this create a feeling of comfort? Does this create a resource that I maybe would like to have again so I can either live another day or enjoy myself doing that thing? So when it comes to us, if we clump behavior into right or wrong, we tend to scold behavior we have deemed a bad dog skill. But remember, maybe we need to use more management, prevention, education to show this other species that's living in mostly a human-run scenario that they may have choice, that they could also say, no thanks, but let's do this instead. So this is why we get into cooperative care, making sure that we're not flooding our dogs or puppies with information that's actually shutting them down or getting them so overwhelmed with the setup that they're no longer learning, but are learning through associations that they are now, no matter what they say, going to be stuck in something that's way too scary or overwhelming. Remember that a lot of times behavior stems from genetics. About 20 to 40% of your dog or puppy's behavior comes from genetics. Part of the other parts would be, for example, what they were involved with while they were in utero with their mother. So if it was a bad setup, maybe a stray dog, maybe a hoarding situation, maybe a puppy mill, maybe not a great breeder, or there's many different venues where mother dogs are under great stress. And because of that, that stress will pass in through the puppies, through the placenta, and sometimes create dogs that are also very anxious even from birth. The other options for creating behavior down the road is, of course, your dog's first few weeks of life are very crucial. So when your puppies are getting exposures, their first 8 weeks of life should be with their mother and their litter mates. They should also be getting experiences to novel sights, sounds, smells, textures. A lot of pups that are sometimes raised on a concrete floor where maybe they're eventually taken away from their mother way too young will lead into other behavioral problems down the road. For example, puppies as young as 8 weeks can start in a puppy program where they can then have that positive association and practice around things, but also from afar and within that puppy's comfort range. Not all group classes are created equal. There are several that sometimes might be more of a flooding the puppy situation or yanking and popping on the collar or the gear to tell the puppy when they're doing something that it's wrong. Remember that, again, your puppy doesn't view things as right or wrong. They view it as I'm safe or unsafe. When someone is correcting the bad dog behavior, you're either showing your puppy that at times you're dangerous or that certain things around them will be the trigger for now it feels uncomfortable or startling. So through associations, if you go to give a pop on the collar while your dog is scared of the UPS man, now they're going to think that being scared of the UPS man paired with ow is maybe the UPS man is the bringer of the pain as well, but maybe so are you or that environment. So typically behavior builds, it doesn't become smaller. So back to creating behavior in your babes. And as I mentioned, 20 to 40% genetics. Part of it will also be what the puppy had gone through in utero and with the mother and litter mates for the first 8 weeks. It is illegal to separate your puppy in many states younger than 8 weeks of age from their mother and litter mates. If your puppy, for example, stays with the breeder or the rescue till about 10 to 12 weeks, that can be beneficial for some. Remember, though, that your puppy's crucial socialization and early experience window closes as young as 12 to maybe 16 weeks of age. So if you wait for your puppy to be fully vaccinated with everything under the sun, you're more than likely going to run into potential behavioral issues because the window for that experience is now closed. So this doesn't mean to go bring your puppy to the most populated part of the environment with lots of dogs and dogs you don't know that have been around and going to the restroom and leaving things behind. Because in those situations, that's what you're trying to avoid, is when your puppy's not completely fully vaccinated, dirty zones like that can be dangerous. If, though, however, your puppy is going to a facility that is sanitized, is up to date with every other adult dog or different age group individual that has to have certain vaccinations and certain things done, your babe has a very low chance of catching something where they could have a greater chance of not going to a program, creating behavioral problems down the road. Puppies that have gone to a positive but comfortable and at their rate type of puppy class or program before the age group of 6 months have much less trouble with novelty, be it people, dogs, and other animals and environments, than dogs that have been unallowed to have that type of start in their early puppyhood. So my main gist to this whole spiel is to make sure that whatever you're doing with your puppy or dog is something that from the puppy's perspective is going to seem comfortable, safe, and something they'd like to have happen. This concept of applying aversive tools that hurt, cause pain, lack of oxygen, or a pinching, biting behavior to the dog is nothing that I would be considering normal for the way dogs should engage with each other anyway. So if the dog goes to the level of applying a big bite to another dog, that's not a normal moment for a mother dog to do that to puppies. So when there's the excuse of using adversives to teach, remember, bring it back to how would you like to learn? Would you prefer a professor that helps build you up and sets you up for success, or someone that waits for you to get confused, make a mistake, and then hurt you in the process? So look to folks that are going to help build up your puppy, raise up your babe's comfort range, abilities, understanding, and then from there, you can really start to change behavior. But remember, suppression is not going to be the, again, solver to behavioral problems. But obviously, if you guys have questions, concerns, or unsure, you can always check in. I'm more than happy to work with folks on one-on-ones. There's many group classes that I offer that would fit for some. Remember that for some babes, starting off in a group setting could be too much. So I normally prefer, depending on the puppy's age group and what they're dealing with for behavioral trouble, is start with the one-on-one, build into potentially a nice base and foundation, and then go from there into the next steps we might need for that particular dog or individual as well. But again, reach out, check out the website, check out the Facebook group, check out my YouTube channel. And again, if you found this information helpful and beneficial, feel free to share or like the content. But again, it's one of those things where we want to have a friend, a companion. And if that's one of my friends, I'm not going to harm them in the process of being friends with me. So we should at least do that same concept for the furry little guys and gals that are in our lives that we treat very much so like family, and hopefully a family member that has nice skills around each other is more of what we'd like. So, but again, thanks for listening and hope to see you guys in the future.